The stars were bleeding tonight. Not literally, of course, but from where Commander Elias Vance stood, on the bridge of the battered human dreadnought Resolute Dawn, it sure as hell looked like it. Plasma fire streaked across the void, slicing through the blackness like glowing scars. Alien warships loomed in the distance, their jagged silhouettes illuminated by the explosions of smaller vessels caught in their wake. Humanity was losing this fight. Again. Elias tightened his grip on the edge of the console, his knuckles pale against the dark metal. His crew was exhausted, running on adrenaline and desperation. The air on the bridge was thick with smoke and the acrid stench of burning circuits. Sparks rained down from damaged panels, casting eerie flashes of light across the faces of his team. They were scared. Hell, he was scared too, but fear wasn't going to save them. "Status report," Elias barked, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Lieutenant Harper, his second in command, glanced up from her station, sweat glistening on her forehead. "Shields are at 18%. Weapon systems are fried, engines barely holding together. We've got maybe one jump left in us, if that." Elias clenched his jaw. One jump. One chance to get out of this alive. He turned his gaze to the viewport, where the alien fleet was closing in. The Xyrixians, a race of cold-blooded conquerors who saw humanity as little more than an infestation to be eradicated. Their ships were sleek and predatory, bristling with weapons that could tear through human defenses like paper. And they weren't just here to win, they were here to annihilate. "Sir," Harper's voice wavered slightly, but she held his gaze. "What are your orders?" For a moment, Elias didn't answer. He stared out at the battlefield, his mind racing. Retreat was the logical choice. They couldn't win this fight, not with a crippled ship and dwindling resources, but retreat meant leaving behind the colony on Etrian 7, a fledgling human settlement that had only just begun to take root. Thousands of lives hung in the balance, families, children, people who had trusted him to protect them. Elias took a deep breath, his decision crystallizing in his mind. "We're not running," he said, his voice steady. "If we can't outrun them, we'll outthink them." Harper, prep the remaining drones for remote detonation. Ensign Cade, reroute all available power to the forward cannons. I don't care if you have to pull it from life support. And someone get me a secure channel to the colony. Now. The crew sprang into action, their fear momentarily eclipsed by the sheer force of Elias's resolve. He moved to the central console, his fingers flying over the controls. A holographic display flickered to life, showing the layout of the battlefield. The Xyrixian fleet was advancing in a tight formation, their largest ships at the center. If he could punch a hole through their lines, create enough chaos to scatter them. The comms crackled, and a voice came through. "This is Governor Marlowe of Etrian 7. Commander Vance, what's happening up there? Are we under attack?" Elias didn't sugarcoat it. "Yes, Governor. The Xyrixians are here, and they're bringing everything they've got. We're doing what we can to hold them off, but you need to prepare for evacuation. Get as many people to the shelters as possible. If we fail..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Marlowe's voice was grim. "Understood. Do what you have to do, Commander. Just buy us some time." Elias ended the transmission and turned back to his crew. "All right, listen up. This is how it's going to go. We're going to hit them hard and fast, draw their attention away from the colony. Once we've got them chasing us, we'll use the debris field from the wrecked ships as cover to make our move. It's risky, but it's the best shot we've got." Harper nodded, her expression resolute. "And if it doesn't work..." Elias allowed himself a faint smile. "Then we make damn sure they remember us." The plan was madness, but it was the kind of madness that humanity excelled at. As the Resolute Dawn surged forward, its engines screaming in protest, Elias felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. He wasn't just fighting for survival, he was fighting for something bigger, for the right to exist, to carve out a place in a galaxy that wanted them gone. The first volley of plasma fire erupted from the ship's cannons, slamming into the nearest Xyrixian vessel. The alien ship shuddered under the impact, its shields flaring brightly before collapsing. A cheer went up from the crew, but Elias silenced it with a sharp gesture. This was far from over. The Xyrixians responded quickly, their ships breaking formation to engage the human dreadnought, just as Elias had hoped. He guided the Resolute Dawn into the heart of the enemy fleet, weaving through the chaos with a precision born of years of experience. Explosions lit up the darkness, each one a testament to the ferocity of the battle. But the Resolute Dawn was taking hits too. The ship shuddered violently as enemy fire tore through its hull, sending showers of sparks cascading across the bridge. Warning alarms blared, and Harper shouted over the noise, "Hull integrity is failing. We can't take much more of this." Elias gritted his teeth. "Hold it together, people. We're almost there." Finally, they reached the debris field, a sprawling graveyard of shattered ships and floating wreckage. Elias maneuvered the Resolute Dawn into the maze of twisted metal, using the debris as cover to evade the pursuing Xyrixians. It was a desperate gamble, but it worked. The alien ships hesitated, wary of following too closely. "Now!" Elias ordered. The remaining drones launched from the Resolute Dawn, each one carrying a payload of explosives. They darted through the debris field, targeting the Xyrixian ships with surgical precision. One by one, the alien vessels erupted in fiery blossoms, their destruction illuminating the void. The crew erupted into cheers, but Elias wasn't celebrating yet. The Resolute Dawn was barely holding together, and the Xyrixians weren't done. Their flagship, a massive, menacing behemoth, was still in play, and it was closing in fast. Elias knew what he had to do. "Harper, get everyone to the escape pods. That's an order." Her eyes widened. "Sir, you can't." "I said that's an order," he snapped. "I'll handle the rest. Go." Reluctantly, the crew obeyed, filing out of the bridge one by one. When the last of them was gone, Elias turned his attention to the flagship. He set a collision course, locking the Resolute Dawn's remaining weapons on the alien vessel. If he was going down, he was taking them with him. As the two ships hurtled toward each other, Elias allowed himself a moment of reflection. He thought of Earth, of the people he was fighting for. He thought of the colony on Etrian 7 and the hope it represented. And he thought of his crew, the brave men and women who had followed him into hell without hesitation. The impact was cataclysmic. The Resolute Dawn slammed into the Xyrixian flagship, the resulting explosion tearing through both vessels with devastating force. For a brief moment, the darkness of space was filled with light, a beacon of defiance, a reminder that humanity would not go quietly. When the dust settled, the Xyrixian fleet was in disarray. The loss of their flagship had broken their morale, and they began to retreat. The colony on Etrian 7 was safe, for now. In the end, Elias Vance became a legend, a symbol of humanity's resilience and determination. And though his sacrifice was great, it was not in vain. Because in the vast, uncaring expanse of the galaxy, humanity had made its mark. And they weren't going anywhere. The debris field hung silent now, a graveyard of twisted metal and scorched wreckage. The Resolute Dawn was gone, its final act of defiance etched into the void like a scar. But humanity had survived. For now. Far below, on the surface of Etria 7, the colony's shelters began to stir. Governor Marlowe stood at the entrance of the largest bunker, her hands trembling as she received the transmission from orbit. Static crackled through the comms, but the message was clear enough. The Xyrixians were retreating. The colony was safe. For a moment she closed her eyes, allowing herself a brief flicker of relief, but it was short-lived. She knew what the cost had been. "Elias?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the shelter's generators. Behind her, the colonists began to emerge, their faces pale and drawn. Families clung to one another, children clutching makeshift toys fashioned from scraps of metal and plastic. They had come here seeking a new beginning, a chance to build something better. And now, they owed their lives to a man most of them would never meet. Marlowe turned to face them, forcing steel into her voice. "We're alive because of Commander Vance and his crew. Remember that. Remember them. And let's make damn sure their sacrifice wasn't for nothing." The crowd murmured in agreement, though their expressions were heavy with grief. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Meanwhile, light years away, in the heart of Xyrixian space, the Supreme Warlord, Cathalis, sat in his throne room, his talons clicking against the armrests of his seat. The chamber was vast and imposing, its walls adorned with trophies from countless conquests, shattered helmets, broken weapons, and even the preserved skulls of fallen enemies. But tonight, the warlord was not celebrating. A holographic display hovered before him, replaying the final moments of the Resolute Dawn. He watched as the human dreadnought plunged into his flagship, the explosion consuming both vessels in a blinding flash of light. It was unexpected. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile creatures, yet time and again they defied the odds, refusing to submit. Cathalis growled low in his throat, his crimson eyes narrowing. "They are pests," he hissed, his voice reverberating through the chamber. "And yet, they fight like predators." One of his advisors, a wiry creature with elongated limbs and a nervous disposition, stepped forward cautiously. "Supreme Warlord, shall we deploy reinforcements to Etria 7? The colony remains vulnerable." Cathalis waved a claw dismissively. "No, let them have their victory. For now, it will make their eventual defeat all the more satisfying." The advisor hesitated. "But my lord, the humans—" "Enough!" Cathalis roared, rising to his full height. His shadow loomed over the advisor, who cowered under his gaze. "Do not mistake their defiance for strength. They are a dying species, clinging to the edges of our galaxy. We will crush them in due time." Still, as Cathalis returned to his throne, a sliver of doubt crept into his mind. Humanity was proving to be more resilient than he had anticipated, and resilience could be dangerous. Back on Etria 7, Harper stood alone on a rocky outcrop overlooking the colony. The twin moons cast a pale glow over the landscape, their light reflecting off the jagged peaks in the distance. She had made it to the escape pods, just as Elias had ordered. Most of the crew had, but not all. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. Survivors weren't supposed to feel this way, were they? Guilty, angry, hollow. She had followed Elias for years, through battles that should have killed them both a dozen times over, and now he was gone. The sound of footsteps behind her broke her reverie. She turned to see Ensign Cade approaching, his expression tentative. He was younger than most of the crew, barely out of the academy, and the events of the past few days had clearly taken their toll. "I thought I'd find you here," he said, his voice quiet. Harper didn't respond immediately. She turned back to the horizon, her gaze distant. "He always said we'd go out fighting," she murmured. "But I didn't think it'd be like this." Cade shifted uncomfortably. "He saved us. Saved the colony. That has to count for something." "It does," Harper said sharply, then softened. "It does, but it doesn't make it easier." For a moment they stood in silence, the wind whispering around them. Then Cade spoke again, his tone hesitant. "What do we do now?" Harper exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cool night air. "We rebuild, we regroup, and when the time comes, we fight, just like he would have wanted." In the weeks that followed, word of the battle spread across human-controlled space. News of Elias Vance's sacrifice ignited a spark of hope among the scattered colonies and fleets. Recruitment numbers surged as men and women from all walks of life volunteered to join the fight. Engineers worked tirelessly to develop new technologies, inspired by the ingenuity displayed during the Battle of Etrian 7. And deep within the military command structure, plans were being drawn up for a counter-offensive. But the Xyrixians were not idle. Their retreat from Etrian 7 was not a sign of weakness, but a calculated move. In the shadows, they were preparing for something far more devastating, a weapon capable of wiping out entire planets in a single strike, and humanity's time was running out. Months later, aboard the newly commissioned battleship Iron Resolve, Harper stood on the bridge, her uniform crisp and her expression determined. She had been promoted to captain, a role she hadn't sought but had accepted nonetheless. The ship was state-of-the-art, bristling with experimental weaponry and reinforced with the latest in human engineering. It was a testament to how far they had come and how far they still had to go. As the ship prepared to jump to its next mission, Harper placed a hand on the console, her thoughts drifting to Elias. She could almost hear his voice, steady and unyielding, urging her forward. "We're not done yet," she said softly, more to herself than anyone else. The stars stretched into streaks of light as the Iron Resolve leapt into hyperspace, carrying with it the hopes of a species that refused to fade quietly into the night.